Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm Walter Haig, and I'm with a firm in Ithaca called Toxics Targeting. And I used to work in this wonderful capital of New York State. And I believe in democracy, and that's why you're all here. I just can't tell you how thrilled I am. Okay, we have a lot of people on a very, very tight time schedule, so before we get going, we're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting to stop horizontal hydrofracking in New York State. So I want you to all stand up. Stand up. Reach up for higher aspirations. Reach down to grassroots. We're going to get stretched out. We're going to do the heavy lifting. Okay. I showed up today. We went to the second floor, and the trooper knew my name. And that's good, and that's bad. So they know we're here. We've already had an incredible impact, but we're going to have an even greater impact. So the reason that we are here is because, as you know, beginning more than a year and a half ago, there was almost a done deal on allowing horizontal hydrofracking to occur in New York State. Then DEC Commissioner Pete Granis said that the drilling would probably begin in March of 2010. So we've held it up for a very, very long time, and frankly, there is no end in sight. And here's why. When I got involved in the fall of 2009, the DEC had asserted that essentially the existing regulations adopted in 1992, the generic environmental impact statement, they were totally fine, but we only needed a little supplemental GEIS to address a couple of additional issues. The extended period of time at the drill pad, because you're drilling up to 16 wells, not one. The effects of increased water drawdown, because fracking one well can take 5 to 7 million gallons. And would the New York City water supply system be adequately protected? I basically documented hundreds of fires, explosions, polluted water supply wells, and with all of your help, we got almost 11,000 signatories to a coalition letter requesting that this fatally flawed draft be completely withdrawn, sent back to the drawing board, and revised in order to protect public health and the environment. And as you know, at the very end of the Patterson administration, he signed an executive order number 41, and he basically gave us what we wanted. He said that the DEC has to revise the existing draft SGEIS to analyze comprehensively all of the impacts of horizontal hydrofracking in Marcellus and other tight shales, and then they have to come up with a plan to avoid or mitigate those impacts. Now the problem is that when Peter Owanowitz was asked when this order was signed, he said it is our clear intent to expand the scope of the proceeding, to put in all the other issues that were originally excluded. Notably, what do you do with the wastewater, which we now know is incredibly salty, it's radioactive, and it's loaded with toxic chemicals that are in the diesel range. So that's the Achilles heel of horizontal hydrofracking in Marcellus Shale. So the first thing that Andrew Cuomo did when he took his hand off the Bible practically is he signed a continuation of Executive Order number 41. That's really good, and we should thank him for that. So he has said, essentially, that all watersheds are sacrosanct, okay? He said that he would not tolerate any drilling that would threaten major sources of drinking water. Well, that's 75% of the Marcellus Shale formation that might be excluded, including the drinking water for 8 million New Yorkers, the largest unfiltered water supply in the world. The problem is that Joe Martens, the DC commissioner, okay, has not said that he's going to expand the scope of the proceeding. He said he's going to finish up the review of the comments, he's going to come out with a new draft, okay? So our fight is to make sure, if at all possible, we expand the scope of the SGEIS to include all of the issues that have recently, for example, been brought to light by Ian Urbina's epic series in the New York Times. So the radioactivity, the high salt, the high toxics, this is now as much a health issue as it is an environmental protection issue. So that's why we're here today. After we are going to listen to some incredibly esteemed speakers, and we're going to go right to that because they have very, very tight time frames. Then we're going to listen to some other speakers. Then we're going to go to the second floor. And we're going to make our voices heard. We're going to bring our slides. It is going to be really hilarious. So now, against that background, I want to introduce someone who has been of just incredible assistance to our movement. She has been a leader. She has fought. She has never relented. I mean, this is the kind of representative that you can be proud of, and I am proud that Barbara Lifton is my representative. Without Barbara, we would not be here, literally and figuratively. We would not have gotten a permit to have our rally. We would not be here in this historic well. So Barbara, thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to see you all here. It's wonderful. Maybe we're going to see a few more people straggling in as we go. I want to return, the mutual admiration. I know all of you know all the work that Walter has done for the last year and a half, really giving over his time day and night. I routinely get emails at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, and so literally, also very literally, we would not be here, I don't think, without the efforts of Walter Hang. In spite of all the work and efforts so many people have done, Walter has a lot of experience in state government around the Capitol and with environmental issues, and it's been invaluable to us. I'm going to speak to you in a little bit, but I've got a number of colleagues. I've talked to a number of my colleagues that were very eager to come and talk to you, and some of them are on very tight schedules. So I'm going to just introduce some of them to say a few words to you, and then I'm going to come back to you and talk to you a little bit more. But Assemblywoman Deborah Glick here from the 66 from Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. Deborah's chair of the Higher Ed Committee, and she's very involved, of course, in the budget negotiations. So I'm going to ask Deborah to speak to you right now. Thank you.
First of all, let me thank all of you for being here and putting a face on the issue and raising your voices in support of clean water for all New Yorkers, not just the people I represent. There could be no more fitting place for us to gather today than here in this area that we refer to as the well, and to talk about the importance of ensuring that every water source, every person's well, is protected from intrusion by toxic chemicals, radioactivity, and high salt content. So thank you very much. I have a representative of our Community Board 1 in Lower Manhattan. Catherine McVeigh-Hughes is a staunch supporter of the environment and pointed out to me, since I've been here all week and not necessarily knowing everything that's happening in the district, that Community Board 1, which is the area that includes the World Trade Center, just to give you an idea of where in Manhattan that is, Community Board 1 came out with a strong, unequivocal resolution in support of expanding the scope and calling on the governor to maintain his commitment to ensuring that we have safe, clean water throughout the state of New York. So thank you, Community Board 1. Without water, there's no possibility of life. So it is inconceivable to me that we would be playing Russian roulette with the most vital and increasingly scarce resource that exists on the planet. I don't know, about maybe 6 months ago, National Geographic did this expansive article, an entire issue on water. And it is clear that across the world, and even in this nation, the issue of fresh, clean water is our future crisis. It's happening all over the Southwest. There are issues about how we can manage to keep large cities going when there have been drought after drought after drought. This is if there is an issue that should unite all people, this is it. And I just think about where would we be if we had just had Jimmy Carter's solar panels on the White House left in place and improved since then. We would not be talking about the need for more oil and more natural gas. So I'm committed to this because I am a human being whose life depends on water, clean, safe water. Not necessarily in a bottle. So I am here to thank you and to commit to you that this is an issue that we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder on, and to say that we have to expand the people who are understanding this, because it's not just New York City's water supply. I have constantly reminded them that it's also our food shed. It's not just a watershed, it's a food shed, because the food is grown in New York State has to come from clean water. So thank you. I know that
Thank you so much. You know, the most important thing to remember is that so many of these representatives are taking time away from incredibly important conference committees. They're engaged in incredible fights on the budget and the like. Hey, how many people here are from Binghamton, New York? Binghamton, give a big shout out. You are so lucky, because in Ithaca we have Barbara Lifton, but in Binghamton we have Donna Lopardo. Binghamton is the epicenter of the proposed drilling. I mean, the pressure is on in Binghamton. They want the money. They're willing to throw caution to the wind. So Donna has taken time away from her conference committee responsibilities. She just wants to say a really quick word, but Donna, you have really been such an incredible stalwart through this whole fight. You have really pushed the DEC to make sure that they do their job responsibly and comprehensively. So thank you for really serving as a beacon of enlightenment.
I wanted to stop down and certainly welcome you to the Capitol. What you're doing is enormously important. You know, several years ago, or probably 2 years ago, when this topic came along, I don't think any of us really understood what we were going to be facing. And I think it came as a surprise to many of us to know that certainly vertical wells had being drilled for numerous years out in the western part of the state. I don't know about you, but as a committed environmentalist, I had no idea. I just wasn't paying attention to that. And when we came to learn about the potential scope of what could be happening in the southern tier and throughout this Marcellus region, I was one of the people who initially raised the red flag that we needed to look at our document to see whether or not it was adequate to this task. And again, working with my colleagues, we impressed upon DEC and the governor at the time to take their time to back up. And as you can see, they have certainly taken their time. I'm very proud of the DEC's diligence. And with our new commissioner, who I'm anxious to work with, they seem to be continuing to take their time. Instead of doing what other states have done, where they have created regulations in reverse. The mistake has been made, and then they go back and take a regulation, or then they realize they don't have enough staffing, and then they bring people on. We want to get it right from the very beginning if we move forward with this activity in the first place. So I admire DEC. They are short-staffed. They certainly could use all the citizen input that they can get. We want to encourage that. And again, working with my colleagues on this important committee, I certainly am committed to being your voice in this matter. I want to wait and see what the DEC comes up with. I feel it's my professional obligation to let them do their work, and then we will micromanage every minute of that and make sure that they have the issues that we expressed initially through those 13,000 comments. I raised the point about air emissions, which is inadequate in the document, and the lack of cumulative impact, and certainly the need for a chain of custody on water if there's going to be any thorough analysis of whether that would be hazardous at the end of the process or not, the issue of cement casing and integrity of the wells. There's so many issues that we have to address, even how we will pay for it in terms of extraction tax, the permit fees, numerous things. So many, too many to talk about, but there are a lot of people deeply committed to honoring your commitment and committed to making sure that this process moves forward in the most transparent and helpful way. There's too much at stake for us in the state to get it wrong. So I'm here to help and do all that I can to try to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Assemblywoman Lupardo. Thanks so much, Donna, for everything you've done on this issue. Walter's off doing an interview with a media outlet, so I'm going to keep standing in here. I want to next introduce, you can see, and you're going to see it with the next speaker again, my colleagues from New York City have been wonderful partners here. Of course, they're deeply concerned. So many people, kind of work at dividing our state. Talk about upstate and downstate and the constant push and pull and divide. I don't think that's a good or helpful thing to do in most cases. As you can see here, we are close colleagues. We work together. We care about the same kind of issues for all New Yorkers. So I'm very proud of the colleagues you're seeing and so many of my colleagues. And I now want to introduce a dear friend and colleague, Assemblyman Daniel O'Donnell. Danny's represents the Upper West Side of Manhattan, the 69th Assembly District. And here's Assemblyman O'Donnell. It's been a great ally.
First, I'd like to thank you for being here today. You have no idea how your presence here matters and has the potential to influence decision-making. I, of course, when this was first proposed, said you can't possibly consider doing this in the New York City watershed. That would be insane. And the companies that are trying to profit off of that made a very good calculation. They said, well, we'll exempt those areas, thinking that they would shut people like me up. That's not likely to happen, and Barbara Lifton won't let it happen. And so, in the end, if it's not right for my drinking water, it's not right for anyone's drinking water. No small degree of irony that this is happening today on the day when the water supply in Japan has been tainted and children can't drink it. One would think on that day that we would all pause and reflect for a second to understand that access to water is access to life. And so I will never step away from this fight. I will never step away from this battle. As long as I'm elected, I will fight tooth and nail to stop this from happening anywhere in this state. Thank you very much.
There's so many wonderful people here. So many of my colleagues, you can see, are just wonderful people. It's a great privilege to serve here with them. And next, Assemblywoman Aileen Gunther wants to talk to you for a couple minutes. Assemblywoman Gunther represents 98th Assembly District, Orange, and Sullivan counties. Aileen.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming here today. It's important that you come and make your voices heard in Albany. And you have been coming for the last 2 years, and we do hear, and we do listen, and we do advocate for your position on hydrofracking. And I want to say thank you to my friend Karen London, Larissa, I have Wes Gillingham, Ramsey Adams, and Bruce Ferguson, Mark Ruffalo, who all live in my district and have really been a source of education and continue to call and write day in and day out to make sure that we know what's going on and make sure that we advocate for the position of no hydrofracking. I've lived in Orange County for a better part of my life, and now I've taken residence in Sullivan County for over 30 years. And my husband's family has been there since before 1900. And I learned so much from my husband Jacob, and he was really a true environmentalist. And a long time ago, when we first saw in a convenience store bottled water. He used to say, can you believe we're actually paying 85 cents for a bottle of water? He said, I never in my life thought that we would come to this day. And then as Danny said, I heard on the news last night that they're trying to ship clean water into Japan because they don't have any. This morning, I met with somebody from economic development in the state of New York, and we had a discussion regarding hydrofracking. And in my opinion, he's really not aware of the impact on the environment, on communities, on economic development in areas of upstate New York where fracking is happening. And I said, look, I represent the western part of Sullivan County. We have great real estate agents. We've had a lot of people from New York City want a second home. It's 90 miles north of New York City. It's a great place to live. Just like Karen London came, and that's why she came. And you know what? They're not buying the property. They're not buying the property because they're afraid that the natural gas drilling, like Dimmock, Pennsylvania, will come and ruin our community. I picked Sullivan County to raise my family because they love the wildlife. My granddaughter was here from Texas. We went down to the Mongop. We were looking at the eagles. I make sure she goes by the river and sees all the little pieces of nature. We bought her binoculars, so she's there. And I'm bringing her up to appreciate the environment and to take care of it. And I think we're examples to our children. We have to continue that. And I'll do whatever I can to help you make sure the DEC does the right thing. On a national level, they do the right thing as far as rules and regulations. And I thank you for coming today.
Assemblywoman Gunther, great, thanks so much. Next, I want to introduce my wonderful colleague from Nassau County, Assemblywoman Marcellus Shale, a great supporter on this, very, very strong environmentalist. She's been working very hard on this. So, Assemblywoman Shale.
Long Island in the house. I want to thank you for teaching me what hydraulic fracturing means. 2 years ago, it was Greek to me. I did not know what it meant. Now it is part of my regular vocabulary, and you're to be thanked for that. And Barbara is to be thanked for that. A tireless leader on so many issues, but particularly, this is the one issue that I will always be thankful to you for this, for educating me and keeping it on my front burner. And that's not my spigot in my kitchen, on my stove, if you've seen that movie. Carl Sagan, a brilliant, wonderful man, said it best: there is no planet B. We get one shot at Earth. We borrow this Earth, do we not? Is it ours? No, we borrow it generation to generation. When I see that beautiful little girl, I think to myself, what planet are we giving our children? Am I right? Just like that watch, that expensive watch, which I can't afford, you save it for your children. Well, guess what? We do the same thing to our planet. So we think technology can cure all the ills of the world, right? Well, technology is great, but it can also be a monster, as we have learned. Japan, the Gulf has taught us that we are so arrogant that we think we can fix everything. Well, we can't. So we think to ourselves, we hear over and over, we get a warning bell, the Gulf, Japan. Well, guess what? It's a 2x4. And you know what I'm learning? It's the water, stupid. Thank you.
Like I said, she's a true environmentalist. Pretty sure that wasn't a prepared speech. She just swings that stuff out. That's from the heart. I want to next introduce my good colleague, also working very hard on this issue, Assemblyman Brian Cavanaugh from Manhattan. I want to know the district.
Thank you, Barbara. Again, I just want to reiterate what a lot of people said. Barbara has been an extraordinary advocate on this for the people from her community, and also for all of us in the state who understand that we have a tremendous common interest in getting this right, this policy on this very dangerous technology that people are trying to foist on us. There's some good news and there's some bad news in this picture and some good news. The bad news is that we are up against an industry that has consistently and forcefully overridden sensible environmental regulation in virtually every place they've operated. You see it in the international setting, you certainly see it in states across this country. We're up against an industry that has overridden the sensible people within the EPA who wanted to regulate the effect of water and some of the other effects of this years ago. They overrode that by making political decisions, by going above the heads of the sensible scientists and the sensible career environmentalists that wanted to put sensible restrictions on this. They've overridden state legislatures and state environmental advocates and state environmental agencies in getting this approved with very little regulation and very little understanding of the harms that have been done. So we've done this throughout the world and throughout this country without a full understanding of its effect on the effect of the massive water withdrawals, the effect on formerly rural communities and their roads and the environmental integrity of the surrounding areas in those communities. We've done it without an understanding of the effect of the dangers that happen at the site, the dangers of accidents and spills. We've done it without an understanding of how this might affect seismological conditions, how it might affect groundwater. We've done it without any reasonable plan in most places for what to do with the wastewater that comes out that is not only toxic but often radioactive, without any plan at all in place to do that. And one more piece of bad news. It happens that much of our state is sitting on a massive, massive pile of what the industry views essentially as cash. Some people estimate that the gas under the Marcellus Shale is worth about $1 trillion. So our land and our environmental situation is viewed by many as an impediment for them getting access to that resource and to that cash. Now, I said there's a lot of bad news, there's some good news. The good news is that for the first time anywhere in the United States, we have had a state that has said to put a genuine halt to this process. We have, a few years ago, there was an idea that the existing regulations were sufficient to do this, that we didn't even need a new environmental impact statement to do this. We could just do it under existing rules. And some very forceful advocates, including a lot of people in this room, including people like Barbara Lifton, said, no, we need to engage in a process to figure out what the dangers are and whether they can be mitigated and how we should address the situation. So the administration got started on that. More than a year ago now, they put out a plan that they said was a sufficient plan, and many of us pushed back. And now they're back to the drawing boards, and now we have a moratorium in place until June. But it's not over yet. The other piece of good news is that the EPA, which in a previous administration was really hell-bent on looking the other way, has now joined forces with advocates and is asking hard questions and is sending subpoenas to gas companies and trying to get a handle on what we really need to do to make sure that our water and our environment are safe. So I'm just here to say I join you and join people like Barbara Lifton and join many of my colleagues who are standing up and saying we are not going to permit this anywhere in our state unless we can be sure that it is genuinely safe for our water, for our children, for our future, and for the environmental integrity of the wonderful place in the state, not just the very urban environment where I live, but really for all of us. So thank you very much.
Another one, right? All these dysfunctional legislators, right? Very dysfunctional group. Yeah, it's part of the attack on government, you gotta watch it. A lot of very fine, thoughtful people, they read, they think, they care. My last colleague that I want to introduce, of course we've worked hard with the Senate as well, and one of my close friends and colleagues, Senator Liz Krueger from Manhattan, from the 26th Senate District in Midtown Manhattan, Liz Krueger. Also a very strong advocate here in policy.
Thank you very much. Well, I just wanted to make sure to come down and join my good friend Barbara Lifton and all the Assembly members you've heard from, and to tell you that those of us in the Senate are fighting hard too. We've learned the lessons. This is a question of science, and we cannot put ourselves, our water, our air, our communities, our children in any risk. And we know that some people have been lying about the science. How many of you were as horrified as I was when you opened up the New York Times or some other paper a few weeks back and learned that studies confirming what we had been saying were being buried? That industry studies were buried, that the EPA, for political reasons, buried some of their own reports during the Bush administration, and when they should have written a letter to New York State saying, no, you can't go forward, they forgot that language in their letter to our state. So, I am proud to be a member of the state legislature. We are the government of New York State. We have an obligation and a responsibility to ensure that until and if it can be proven by science that there is not a risk to communities, to our water system, to our air system from hydrofracking, until we can be sure and it's proven by science that wastewater from hydrofracking can in fact be returned as clean to our environment, that we have to say no to hydrofracking. That's as simple as it is. It's not that I don't care that there may be some way for people to make some money out of natural gas. It's not that I don't care that if you can get natural gas the right way, it may be a better alternative than some of the other sources of energy we have. It's not good enough to say, well, if we could just get it out, there would be some advantages. We have to prove that we are not risking our environment in order to get it. It's that simple. And government's job is to make sure that until the science proves it, we aren't allowed to let it happen. Not to the 19 million people in New York State. So thank you very much for your work.
Well, one of the people who has really carried the load for so many years, who has never turned down a request to come and talk about horizontal hydrofracking, who has probably killed a few cars by now, is Wes Gillingham. He has just been an incredible fighter. He has traveled hither and yon. He got a lot of this effort going in the beginning, and I know many of you know him, and so we're very, very fortunate that his strength is held up. Wes Gillingham, Catskill Mountain Keeper.
Thank you. So we've already had a lot of speakers. We all know why we're here. We're here today because a few years ago, we got this supplemental process started. When I first opened up the original GEIS, I quickly looked up cumulative impacts. What do they have in here for cumulative impacts? And I get to this page that says, due to the nature of gas drilling, there are no cumulative impacts. I knew right then that there was something really wrong with the regulations in the state of New York. This whole fallacy that we've got the best regulations in the country, even if that were true, that's pretty sad to me. But something needed to be done. So we got the supplemental process started, and where did we go from there? A year and a half later, the State Department of Environmental Conservation gave us this 800-page document that said, cumulative impacts are difficult to predict. Okay, does everybody feel better now? That's what it said. There was so much wrong with that document. The cumulative impacts from air pollution, from the technological pieces of casing. The document said, in one line or two lines in there was, the setback from a stream is 50 feet. In '98, it was talked about moving it to 150 feet, period. It's still 50 feet. That's not creating better regulations. What we realized and what we came here for is the simple fact that I'm going to use a technical term here. The draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement that we got sucks. The whole idea that they're going to complete going through all that review from the thousands and thousands of comments and then give us something to protect us, and the whole idea that it's going to be done by June 1st is absolutely unacceptable. We have this great poster here and over there with a wonderful statement, but let's see something concrete about that. Throw out the arbitrary deadline, give the DEC as much time as they need, wait for some of the science come out, and first and foremost, throw out the document that sucks and start it over again. Speakers, so I'm going to keep this short. Just keep that in mind when we go upstairs, and let's make him hear that. Thank you.
Is this fun or what? This is the reason I was a grassroots organizer for 12 years. I keep telling myself that in moments when I remember why I left grassroots organizing. Anyway, that's a brief aside. An acclaimed author, an incredible scientist, a cancer survivor, Sandra Steinberger.
All right.
Well, hello, New York. My name is Sandra Steingraber. I live in Tompkins County, New York. I'm a biologist, an author, and a mother of 2 young children. And I'm also a cancer survivor. 32 years ago, I woke up in a hospital bed and I heard a doctor tell me that I had bladder cancer. Those are stunning words to hear when you're a 20-year-old pre-med student. My doctor had some questions for me, and they were all about my possible environmental exposures. Well, lying there exhaling anesthesia, I didn't know the answer to his questions. But 15 years later, armed with a PhD, I went back to my hometown to try to find out. And I discovered that my hometown drinking water aquifer was contaminated with dry cleaning solvent. No one could explain to me how it got there. The underlying geology was not supposed to allow that to happen. Dry cleaning fluid causes bladder cancer. I wrote about these discoveries in my book, Living Downstream, which is now a movie. And the research for that book took me across the length and breadth of this nation, where I found out a lot of communities are suffering from groundwater contaminated with chemicals that nobody can explain how they got there. I discovered that there's a lot we don't know about this subterranean landscape that we walk over every day. It's a complicated, unmapped world down there with many invisible, interconnecting passageways that are only discovered when something goes terribly wrong. Right upstream from us here in the Hudson River are communities contaminated with carcinogens called PCBs. Those chemicals found their way into the river not only because General Electric dumped them there, but because they seeped from the factory floor through naturally occurring fissures in the shale bedrock itself in ways nobody thought was possible. So I have 4 questions for you, New York. Here's the first one. General Electric is arguing to the EPA that it should not be compelled to dredge up the PCBs because more will just continue to seep through the shale. It's that permeable. Meanwhile, the energy industry argues to the EPA that fracking should remain exempt from federal environmental regulation because the shale is impermeable. Does that make sense to you? No! Here's my second question. Last spring, the President's Cancer Panel of our National Cancer Institute delivered a report to President Obama that urged him in the strongest possible terms to use the power of his office to remove chemical carcinogens from our air, food, and water. Because the burden of human cancer contributed by chemical environmental exposures is, quote, diminishing the productivity of our nation and adding ruinous costs to our healthcare system. Cancer turns out to be the most expensive disease that you can have. But fracking will fill our roads with fleets of carcinogen-spewing trucks, our fields and forests with diesel-powered compressors, our rural air with benzene and toluene and other carcinogenic vapors. It will bring up carcinogens that are right now safely locked up in the geological strata: cadmium, arsenic, lead, and radioactive isotopes. So my question is, does that make sense? No! All right, recently I was in Alaska, where, as you know, there's a petroleum pipeline that goes from Nome to Valdez. Natural gas comes up with that oil. Alaska could build a pipeline to bring that natural gas to market. Sarah Palin was in favor of it, and so are all the environmentalists I talked to in Alaska. But the project is put on ice, and the gas is just being flared off. It's heating nobody's home. It's adding nothing to our quest for energy independence. Why? Because, according to the Anchorage Daily News, hydrofracking in the eastern U.S. has created such a supply glut, brought the price so low that it's an economic disincentive to invest in a pipeline. It's just not profitable. So, we're being asked to turn our precious New York water into poison and use it as a club to shatter the bedrock of our communities and teach our teenage children how to drive on icy roads full of trucks hauling hazmat, and meanwhile natural gas on the North Slope is just a waste product. Does that make sense to you? No! All right, New York, you're good at saying no. Now let's see if I can prompt you into a yes with my last question. A lot of people I know in my community are seriously considering leaving the state before the frackers arrive. They are betting that we're going to lose this fight. But I look out at our beautiful state, and I see a history of heroism. I see Lois Gibbs in Buffalo, New York, who took on Love Canal and gave us the Superfund. I read about her while lying in my hospital bed in 1979. I see Auburn, New York, the home of Harriet Tubman, who gave us abolitionism. I see Seneca Falls, that gave us Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They refused to accept the reality of women's inequality. They stayed and they fought. And I want to do that too. But I'm the mom of a child who has a history of asthma. And my last cancer checkup a few months ago was not entirely reassuring. In fact, 1 week from now, I'll be lying at this time on an ultrasound table in the hospital while waiting for the results of my last test. And I'll be thinking about all those bladder carcinogens and frac emissions and waste fluid. And then, whatever the results are, I'm going to get up, pull out the tubes, pull off that bathless blue cotton gown, get dressed, and rejoin the fight to expand the scope of the SGEIS. And my last question is, are you with me? Are you?
From Niagara Falls, and I met her when she was a little housewife who had kids that went to a school that was built on top of the Love Canal, and she's obviously learned a lot about how you take advantage of the forces, the tools that we can bring to bear on this fight. Obviously, as Sandra has graphically demonstrated, this is a health issue as much as it is an environmental issue, and that's how come I'm now pleased to introduce Dr. Larissa Durska, who is going to talk to us about that.
Thank you. My introduction to the SGEIS, to hydrofracking, similar to Wes's situation, was by reading the SGEIS in preparation for the hearing. And I was appalled because there was nothing, there was no chapter, there was nothing about health. The SGEIS fails to protect human health totally. And what we have to do is expand that SGEIS so that it addresses human health issues. It can do that by allowing the New York State Department of Health to be a part of all gas drilling issues, all decisions involving gas drilling issues, and to be a co-lead agency on the SGEIS, which should be expanded to include human health impacts. Until such time as it is expanded, we cannot allow issues that have happened to people we know, people who've just spoken to us, to allow similar situations to happen to our families and to areas where we reside. The human health impacts must be addressed, and they must be addressed before the SGEIS comes out. I'd like to tell you that I'm not alone in saying this. Recently, we sent a letter out for signatories, and the signatories included physicians, organizations that were across the state of New York, included research institutions, medical practices, institutions such as national ones in scope. For example, Physicians for Social Responsibility, the national chapter in Washington, has signed on to this letter. To Dr. Shaw, a lot of you are familiar with this because it's circulated among our groups. And this letter simply asks that the SGEIS include the Department of Health as co-lead agency. What's wrong with that idea? From the Department of Health, from Dr. Shaw, so we're expecting an answer from him shortly. Otherwise, we will have to do these health impacts assessments on our own, without the help of the New York State Health Department. What we need to do is expand this area of information to the general public, that your health, that of your children, is going to be impacted, and not only the health department, but the medical community in general must be involved. We have leading institutions of medical learning in New York State. Let's use them to find out how our health is going to be impacted by gas drilling. Anything short of that is inadequate. Thank you.
Catherine Hughes has been a long-term advocate on lead contamination in New York City. She led the fight for dealing with the problems with the 9/11 tragedy, and now she has just been an incredible force in New York City, working with Community Board 1. They've passed resolution after resolution. It's really been an incredible help. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Walter. Good afternoon. I am here from New York City, from Manhattan Community Board 1, to make sure that Albany hears one message loud and clear. There's no greater threat to New York City than natural gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale. Some people say that New York City runs on finance, on fashion, on advertising, or Broadway. Some people says it runs on transit or real estate. But if you want to stop New York running in just one day, poison the water. And this is no imaginary threat. You don't have to look far to see the threat in action. You just have to look to our neighbors into Pennsylvania, their poisoned wells, their shattered aquifers, flaming water from their taps. In small towns, the drillers bring in water bottles or in trucks. They buy up drinking wells, and their money and the jobs they bring. With all that, they buy some silence, but not with us here today. However, no company can afford to replace the water system that makes New York City run for over 8 million people. I'm here from Community Board 1 that knows what danger is. The World Trade Center site is in the middle of our district. On Tuesday night, our Community Board unanimously passed a resolution to urge Governor Cuomo to withdraw the Department of Environmental Conservation's draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement for Marcellus Shale horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracking in the New York City watershed. Community Board 1 is outraged that EPA Region 2 did not have the courage to include in its original recommendation that there should be a moratorium on drilling in the New York City watershed. Lower Manhattan residents and workers call on Governor Cuomo to make good on his promise that he would not support any drilling that would threaten New York's major sources of drinking water. Keep the politics out of our water supply, keep our drinking water safe. This draft EIS is toxic and poisonous for New Yorkers. Governor Cuomo, now is the time to make good on your election promise to New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And another one of my colleagues has come, a new colleague from Westchester County, Assemblyman Tom Abernathy. He's eager to speak to you
today.
Good afternoon. I'm new to the Assembly, but not new to government or the concerns that you have. As a Westchester County legislator, I was one of those who pushed through our Board of Legislators a resolution opposing hydrofracking. And we too in Westchester share your concerns. It seems that not a week goes by without a report from somewhere of another major innovation that was supposed to deliver cheap energy has produced some unintended consequence somewhere. That some big business, having made its big profits, has left the community to deal with some big problems. Environmental destruction, sick people, people dying. How many years will it take before we know that disturbing the natural order will produce negative consequences? And seriously disturbing the natural order will produce serious negative consequences. The term hydrofracking sounds like such an innocent term, but it seriously corrupts our natural environment and is already proven to have very serious, disastrous consequences. How many years will it take before we know that just because some big business wants it, it doesn't have to be tried? How many years will it take before we know that too much of our environment's been destroyed, too much of our environment's been destroyed, too many people have been sickened, and too many of our people have died? Thank you.
We're really fortunate today to have Gene Still, a legendary organizer from Pennsylvania, with us. Gene, what do you got to say?
Hey, when people sit down, stand up for a second. Stand up for a second. Stretch your legs for a second, okay? All right. You people in the back standing up, sit down. Just kidding. Okay, you can sit down. You can sit down. Okay, everybody stretch a little bit. You can sit down, young man. Obviously I spent a lot of time in Albany and other business, but I talked to Walter, and I always spent a lot of time in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to the capital of Pennsylvania. Who is, anybody know anything that's happening in Pennsylvania? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay, okay. And you know what's going on there. The former governor, Rendell, sold everybody out. Sold everybody out immediately years ago when people really weren't aware of what was going on. He continues to sell out the state of Pennsylvania. And then we have a new governor down there. Who's the new governor? What's his name? Wrong. His name is Tom Corporate, okay? He's taken every dollar he could from the drilling interest. He loves gas drilling. He might as well divorce his wife and marry a gas drilling company, okay? Because he's taken $1.2 million during his campaign. The other thing too is his whole inauguration was paid for by the gas drillers. I'm not going to talk to you about science, I'm going to talk to you about the political process. The political process involves billions of dollars, millions and billions of dollars. You're going to see more money come into New York State this year than ever before. You might be monitoring the environment also, but there's going to be a lot of scandals involving politicians taking money, government officials turning the other way, and whole agencies that are going to turn the other way because of money that's going to influence the state. It's going to be amazing, so keep your eyes open for that in a big way. I'm not talking just about the state level too. Township officials, county officials, authority officials, and things like that. It's going to be so horrible you wouldn't believe it. In Pennsylvania, everything has been changed in Pennsylvania. It is an actual civil war down there. Community against community, brother against sister, land interest against land interest, and it's constant down there, constant. So what you have to do is sure, do the environmental stuff, go after this and fight this and make sure they go after this, but don't give 1 square inch away of New York State. Don't give 1 square inch of water away. Say no to all drilling, okay? And you have to do that. We are losing in Pennsylvania at this point. We are losing in Pennsylvania. I spent a lot of time on the road, many capitals, but in Pennsylvania, I go back there, I see how we're losing. The whole state is bought and sold. Both houses of the legislature, Republican-controlled legislature, governor-controlled legislature are sold out. So don't let that happen here. Fight hard. do it. Do it up hard here, and take a look to your right and take a look to your left, okay? There are other people you're going to depend on in this fight, okay? If somebody says, hey, we'll take care of you, don't trust them. And you got to get more people involved. Go to it. The next thing, I don't see one big prop in this building today, okay? Props, large props tell the people, they attract the media, which is an educational source, okay? I have a school bus painted red, white, and blue, okay, with drilling rigs on the side, and you're welcome to use it all across New York State. Go out there and talk about this, okay? Just Walter can get in touch with me. We can do tours across the state. You have to use the media to educate all the people in the state to force this issue, okay? You cannot sleep on this at all. Thanks so much.
I'm so glad to see young students here today, young staff people. Seems like only yesterday that was me. I'm so ancient I can't even run or play hockey. Anyway, when I was 22 years old, 34 years ago, I met Robert H. Boyle. He is an esteemed, incredible, historic author. He wrote the history of the Hudson River, natural and unnatural history of the Hudson River. He revealed the PCB contamination of the Hudson River, which has migrated 200 miles from General Electric facilities in the Upper River Basin. That's the largest federal Superfund site in the nation. And when I met Bob, he told me that the environmental movement, this is 34 years ago, he said the environmental movement was punch-drunk and arm-weary. And he said that we needed new blood, we needed revitalization. And he was right, but he was even more right today. And the fact that all of you are here is a testament to the leadership that Bob Boyle has provided to inspire so many people in my generation to do this kind of work. So I am incredibly humbled that Bob is gracing us with his presence. A big hand for Robert Boyle.
I wouldn't be anywhere else today. It's scandalous that we have to gather in the state capitol now to protest against the assault on our lands, waters, and lives by the frackers. But let's make this day the turning point in the battle against the bullying corporate powers that believe they have bought and own our governments. Let's make this the D-Day of their defeat. You heard about the draft environmental impact statement. Let me tell you this. It smells to me of an inside job. The Minerals Resources Division in the DEC does not look after the people of the state. Instead, the Minerals Resources Division has taken its orders from two stooge organizations run by the oil and gas industry. You may be aware of them, but let me give you their names. The Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, set up by Congress, and the Groundwater Protection Council, both based in Oklahoma City. Bradley J. Field, the director of the Mineral Resources Division, officially represents New York State on both the commission and the council. And both these organizations, following the dictates of the industry that rules them, have opposed any federal regulations so they can have sway over our lands, water, and lives. Both organizations deny any problems with fracking, and Bradley Field has done the same by parroting that party line before the state legislature and before citizen groups. Who is going to call the shots in New York State? Bradley Field in Oklahoma City, or the people of the state? Let's tell that to Governor Cuomo.
Voice and wisdom and experience. Speaking of, Barbara Lifton's going to send us out, and then I'm going to have just a couple of words, and then you know where we're going.
Thank you. Thank you, Walter. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyle. I look forward to meeting you. Thank you all again for coming today. You know, Woody Allen famously said that 95% of life is just showing up. And many of you have been showing up over and over and over again. I've seen you in Ithaca, I've seen you in Binghamton, and here in Albany at least once, twice, how many times now? Very important that you do that. because as is clear to everyone, we are up against very large, powerful, the wealthiest, most powerful special interest in the world on the planet. They pay people to come and speak for them. How many of you here, did any of you get paid to come here today? I sort of thought. So you must be here because you are listening to your hearts, to your heads. You have looked at this issue, you have studied it, you have read, you have seen. You've all looked at Gasland, very powerful movie. They're going after Josh Fox, you see. We've got to gather around, protect Josh. You've listened to your heads and your hearts, and that actually makes you and all of us more powerful than those moneyed special interests that are trying to roll over our state government. We and you are the most powerful people. And of course, you're not just showing up here today, you haven't just shown up at other rallies, but you've emailed, and you've called, and you've written letters, and you've been mobilizing in your communities and around the state. All critical work. You know, Gandhi said, what you do may seem insignificant at times, but it's very important that you do it, and very important that you keep doing it. And now we have the New York Times series with yet more evidence, again, confirming the many rumors that were out there and things that we suspected of the very serious damage that's been caused in other states by high-volume hydrofracking. I've asked for the documents. Now I've put in a request to the DEC asking for all their documents of exchange of communication between the EPA and the DEC from 2007 on this issue of Marcellus Shale drilling. I want to see to what extent the great concerns, the Monongahela River, the city of Pittsburgh out of clean drinking water for 2 months, the city of Pittsburgh on bottled water for 2 months, and to what degree that was communicated to our state as we began to look at this issue of high-volume hydrofracking. So I'm going to be looking at those documents, and I'm going to be keep listening to you, working with all the great advocates. Having said thank you to Roger Downs, if he's here with Sierra Club here, who's been a wonderful ally as well, and Catherine Nadeau from Environmental Advocates. I'm going to keep pushing here in Albany to hold the DEC and the state's feet to the fire, to deal with cumulative impacts, the treatment and disposal of wastewater, the role of the Department of Health, and all these other critical issues. I know you're going to continue doing that. You give me hope that we are going to win this battle to protect our water and to protect our lives here in New York. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Catherine, who is about to drop, I think, her first baby on Saturday. Best of luck. Roger, thank you very much for helping out, reaching out to your thousands of members. I also want to thank Elaine and Ben Perkis. Whoa, without you helping us, we would just be screwed. And you have just done so much. It's just unbelievable. Also, Karen Glauber and your colleagues at NIRAD. So, well, this is the big moment. I mean, what is this all about? I mean, when you have all of these elected officials coming here to talk to you, to speak about your concerns, that's power. And the most important thing, that shows respect. And that's what this is all about. It would be lovely if it were just about science, that if the science could be presented and then the public health would be protected, the environment would be protected. That's what I believed when I came here 34 years ago, and then I was very quickly dissuaded of that. It isn't about science. It isn't about the law. It's really about the politics of the matter. And that's why we have been attacking this problem the way that we've been attacking it. That's why we're here today. That's why we've been bird-dogging Andrew Cuomo since last August. And that's how come we are on the threshold of winning this fight, I believe. We are like on the 1 yard line, one big pitch, push, and we're into the end zone. Why do I believe that? Well, yesterday, as we were running around in preparation for coming here, Elaine Perkis made a single phone call to the Department of Environmental Conservation to try to get a meeting with the commissioner, and he cleared his calendar. 3:15, we're going to meet with the commissioner. So, that is respect. Now, are we going to get a deal? We don't have very much time, but we're getting closer, and that is because of the work that you're doing. That's the phone calls, that's the letters, that's the emailing. That's what's bringing the troopers here, frankly, because we are now a force, we're organized. So speaking of, we're now going to go up, you just follow us in a big snake to the second floor. We're going to walk up, don't go in yet. We're going to walk up a big stairwell, and we're going to gather appropriately in what's called the war room. We're going to be just a little ways away, basically from the governor's office. Okay, so once we get into the stairwell, we can chant and we can yell and we can call out as we see fit. Again, as usual, better if we're all organized and chanting the same thing. So I know you'll take the lead. Then we're going to go into the war room. We'll, just have a few comments there. We got to be loud, right? We got to make sure that Andrew Cuomo gets the message. It is going to be really fun. We're going to dwarf the teachers. Okay, so just get ready, drink some water, and then some of you are going to have meetings and the like. Now, here are just a couple of rules. Okay, we can't obstruct the stairwell. We're just going to move through and go to basically the war room. So if in the unlikely event you get asked to do anything by a state trooper, they're very recognizable by their hats. They're very natty purple ties, and you can't miss them. Please do immediately what they ask. Do not, under any circumstances, reach out and touch an officer, okay? So we're all in this together. We're doing great. We're going to go to the war room. We're going to chant and yell. We're going to wave our signs, and I love these signs. I mean, I just love this. All watersheds are sacrosanct, but as Wes Gillingham pointed out, those are just words. So thank you so much for everything that you have all done. It is just another great day of democracy. We're in the people's house, and we are going to try to get the best deal we possibly can. So again, thank you so much. Drive carefully. Thank you for coming. On to the second floor!